The unexpected test. The air in the exam room was thick with tension. The metallic walls hummed faintly as the humans stood together, eyes darting nervously from one alien to another. They had been summoned for what seemed like a simple test, but none of them had any idea what to expect. The room was nothing like Earth's classrooms. There were no desks, no chairs, and no chalkboards. Instead, strange, glowing panels covered the walls. They shifted and pulsed, as though alive, casting eerie lights that made the whole room feel foreign and unsettling. The students could only guess what the aliens had planned. They had heard the stories. The tests were brutal, designed to break even the most advanced species. Standing in front of them was an alien, tall and thin, its skin a pale shade of blue, with eyes that shimmered like liquid silver. It spoke in a language that none of the students could understand, but the words were quickly translated by a device hovering above them. The alien's voice was cold, clinical, and full of authority. "You will be tested," the alien said, its voice echoing through the room. "This is no ordinary exam. You will be challenged in ways that will test your limits. Fail, and you will remain here forever. Succeed, and you will be worthy of the universe's respect." The human students exchanged uncertain glances. They had been told they were part of an experiment, but no one had expected this. They had been selected because they were humans, an odd species in the eyes of the galaxy. They weren't supposed to be smart, advanced, or even capable of surviving in space. Yet, here they were, standing in a room with alien beings, about to face something none of them understood. The alien leader raised a long, bony hand and pointed to a strange device on the wall. It hummed to life, and holographic images began to appear. They were patterns, symbols that moved and shifted, constantly changing before their eyes. The symbols seemed to dance in the air, taunting them with their complexity. "Your task," the alien explained, "is to solve the puzzle before you. You have 1 hour." The students stared at the symbols, trying to make sense of them. They had no idea what they were looking at, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just a math test or a simple puzzle. It was something far beyond anything they had encountered on Earth. As the minutes ticked by, the students felt the pressure mounting. Some of them tried to think logically, analyzing the symbols with the knowledge they had. Others looked around, hoping to find some clue or hint hidden in the room, but nothing made sense. Mark, one of the human students, felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. He glanced at the alien examiners, their eyes locked onto him with an air of superiority. They were confident. They were sure that no human could ever solve their puzzle. He could feel their judgment, and it made his stomach churn. But something inside Mark stirred. He wasn't going to let them see him fail. Not after everything humanity had fought for. He remembered the stories of how humans had been underestimated, dismissed as weak, and unworthy by so many alien species. But look where they were now. They had survived. They had thrived, and they had defied the odds time and time again. Mark clenched his fists. He wasn't going to be just another statistic. Jenna, a fellow student, was deep in thought. She had remained silent since the test began, but now she stepped forward, closer to the glowing symbols. She studied the patterns, her mind racing. She could feel the pressure building as the ticking of the timer echoed in her ears. The alien examiners were still watching them, but Jenna had no time to worry about their gaze. She was determined to solve this, to prove that humanity wasn't just a species to be ignored. Suddenly, she saw it. One of the symbols shifted slightly. It was a small change, barely noticeable, but Jenna's sharp eyes caught it. She reached out and touched the air, manipulating the holographic interface with ease. The symbols rearranged themselves in response to her touch. Mark watched in awe as she continued to work, her fingers moving faster and more confidently. She had found something that the aliens hadn't counted on: human ingenuity. How did you do that?" Mark whispered, unable to believe his eyes. Jenna didn't answer him. She was too focused on the task at hand. The room grew quiet, except for the soft hum of the machine. The other students watched in disbelief as Jenna solved the first puzzle with ease, unlocking the hidden message in the symbols. The aliens exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. They had not expected this. The test was supposed to be impossible. It was designed to break any species that attempted it. Yet here was a human, solving it in front of them, without hesitation. The alien leader stepped forward, its cold, silver eyes narrowing as it looked at Jenna. "Impossible," it muttered under its breath. "No human should be able to do this." But Jenna wasn't finished. She had already moved on to the next part of the puzzle, and the alien examiners were starting to look concerned. This wasn't just a test of intelligence, it was a test of survival. And Jenna was showing them that humans were far more resilient than they had ever imagined. The countdown clock ticked down. 1 minute, then 30 seconds. Jenna's fingers flew across the interface, her mind working at lightning speed. The aliens watched in stunned silence. They had underestimated humanity, but it was too late to turn back now. Mark watched in awe as Jenna finished the puzzle just seconds before the timer ran out. The glowing symbols vanish, replaced by a clear message on the screen. Test complete. Human ingenuity confirmed. The alien leader stood still for a moment, unable to process what had just happened. Then it spoke, its voice barely a whisper. This is not possible." Jenna stood there, breathing heavily, her eyes fixed on the alien leader. She had done it. She had proved that humans were not just some species to be tested. They were a force to be reckoned with. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and now they were beginning to understand the true power of the species they had once thought weak. The unexpected strength. The atmosphere in the room shifted as Jenna completed the first puzzle, but the real test was only just beginning. The alien examiners stood motionless, their eyes locked onto the humans with a mix of disbelief and growing wariness. This test, crafted with the finest alien technology, had been designed to break even the most intelligent beings in the galaxy. Yet this group of seemingly simple humans had already defied the odds. "Well done," the alien leader said, its voice colder than before. It seemed almost reluctant to acknowledge Jenna's success. But this is only the first challenge. The real test begins now. The holographic panels around them flickered and shifted, revealing new symbols and diagrams. The humans took in deep breaths, preparing themselves for whatever came next. The countdown timer reset, this time showing a more daunting time limit. 2 minutes. Jenna took a step back, wiping the sweat from her brow. She had been focused, but the pressure was immense. There was no room for error now. Mark and the others stood behind her, watching with wide eyes. Jenna had made it clear that humans were capable of more than the aliens ever expected. But now, the stakes were higher. The aliens didn't say a word, merely watching as the new symbols began to dance in midair. They were more complex than the last ones, and to a trained eye, they seemed almost unsolvable. The humans began to gather around the panel, studying the symbols, but this time, the silence in the room was deafening. The ticking of the timer sounded louder, like a drumbeat in the background of an impending storm. Mark felt his pulse quicken. He wasn't as confident as Jenna, and he knew he wasn't as skilled in solving puzzles, but the weight of the moment bore down on him. He couldn't just stand back and watch. The aliens had already seen what humans could do, but he needed to show them that they were more than just pawns in this experiment. He stepped forward, positioning himself next to Jenna. "Let's figure this out," he said, his voice steady but low. Jenna nodded, not breaking her focus. "We need to think about how these symbols are changing. Look at their patterns." She pointed at a shifting symbol. "This one is different. It's been manipulated in a way that the others haven't." The clock was ticking down. 30 seconds had passed, and the symbols were growing more chaotic. Mark felt the pressure intensify. The room seemed to close in around them, but he forced himself to stay calm. He knew that panic would get them nowhere. He tried to block out everything except the symbols in front of him. They were so strange, so alien, but there had to be a pattern. There always was. He had studied math and logic on Earth. Maybe those skills would help here. He bent over the panel, tracing the patterns with his fingers. He could feel the heat of the device beneath his touch. "What's your plan?" Jenna asked, her voice calm and reassuring. Mark's eyes widened. "I think I see it. The changes aren't random. They're following a sequence. If we adjust them in the right order, we can unlock the next part of the test." Jenna studied the symbols with him, her brow furrowed. "You're right, but we only have a few seconds." Mark's hand hovered over the panel as the clock ticked down further. His mind raced. He reached for the first symbol, manipulated it, and then adjusted the second. He watched as the holograms responded to his touch, shifting in line with the sequence he had in mind. "Done," he shouted, just as the timer reached its final second. The room was still. The alien examiners remained silent, staring at the panel. Mark and Jenna exchanged a glance, unsure of what would happen next. The holographic symbols dissolved into nothingness, and for a moment, there was no sign of any change. Then, the panel flared with bright golden light. The aliens' eyes widened, and their posture shifted. It was clear they hadn't expected this. "Impossible," muttered the alien leader, its voice barely audible. "This cannot be happening." The humans stood in disbelief. They had done it again. The timer reset once more, but this time, there was no new challenge. The alien leader stepped forward, its demeanor now much more cautious. "You have completed the second challenge," it said, its voice laced with uncertainty. "But understand this, you have only seen the beginning. The tests will become more difficult, more dangerous. There will be no mercy. Fail now, and there is no turning back." The humans stood together, united in their resolve. They had overcome what seemed impossible twice now, but they knew the worst was yet to come. The aliens had underestimated them from the start, but that was about to change. Mark clenched his fists. "We'll show them what humanity is made of." Jenna nodded. "We're just getting started." The aliens had thought they knew what it meant to be powerful, but humanity was proving them wrong. And the humans weren't about to back down now. The test wasn't just about solving puzzles. It was about showing the universe that humanity was capable of more than anyone had ever imagined. The unseen power. The tension in the room thickened. The alien examiners stood in shocked silence, still processing what had just happened. The humans had solved the impossible, and there was no denying it. Mark and Jenna exchanged glances, both feeling the weight of the next challenge hanging in the air. The room shifted again. The floor beneath them hummed as a new set of symbols and intricate designs appeared on the walls. They were no longer just puzzles to solve. Now they were something more, a test of strength, of willpower. The humans could feel it in the air. The pressure was building, and they had no idea what would come next. One of the aliens, a tall, angular figure with shimmering blue skin, stepped forward. Its sharp eyes locked onto the humans. "The next test will test your endurance," it said in a low, gravelly voice. "You will face challenges beyond what your species has ever encountered. Fail, and you will be eliminated from this trial." Jenna took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She could sense the shift in the atmosphere. The aliens were no longer just watching. They were beginning to fear them. But fear didn't matter. What mattered now was survival. Mark's mind raced. He had thought the last test was difficult, but this was something different. The aliens' warning hung in the air like a dark cloud. What was coming next? What did they mean by endurance? The walls lit up, revealing new mechanisms and devices. Some were connected to the panels, others to floating platforms. The devices whirred to life, their alien technology humming softly. As the lights dimmed, an eerie silence filled the room. The countdown timer appeared once again, this time with an even shorter time limit. 30 seconds. Without warning, the floor beneath the humans began to shake. The ground cracked open, revealing a series of metallic traps and obstacles. The alien's cold laughter echoed through the chamber. You will have to navigate these traps. Fail to reach the finish line within the time limit, and you will be removed from the test. Mark's heart skipped a beat. He could already see the deadly traps ahead. Spinning blades, retracting floors, and walls that seemed to move on their own. The sheer complexity of the challenge was mind-boggling. But Mark wasn't about to back down. He couldn't afford to. Stay focused, he said, turning to Jenna. We can do this. Jenna nodded. The look in her eyes was determined, unwavering. She wasn't afraid of the traps. She was afraid of failing her people. The timer began, and the floor rumbled again, urging the humans to move. Without another word, Mark sprinted forward, his legs pumping as fast as they could go. Jenna followed close behind, her pace steady but quick. They had to stay in sync. They had to make it out of this room. The first trap came into view, an enormous blade swinging down from the ceiling. Mark dove to the side, rolling to avoid its sharp edge. Jenna was close behind, her body twisting to avoid the blade's deadly arc. The floor beneath them trembled as they continued forward, but they didn't have time to think. The traps were coming faster now. The walls began to close in on them. Mark sprinted harder, his breath coming in shallow gasps. He had to keep going. He couldn't stop. Jenna was beside him, her eyes fixed ahead, her determination evident. She didn't flinch even as the walls inched closer. They had no choice but to move faster. Another trap. A wall of spikes rose from the ground in front of them, blocking their path. Mark's mind raced. There was no way around it. He had to think fast. Without hesitation, he grabbed Jenna's hand and pulled her toward the side. The spikes shot up from the ground with terrifying speed, but they managed to sidestep the deadly trap. They were getting closer to the finish line, but the traps were becoming more complex with every step. A pit opened beneath them, revealing a deep chasm filled with rotating blades. Mark's stomach dropped. There was no way to avoid it. He looked to Jenna, who was already moving toward a narrow ledge that ran along the edge of the pit. "Follow me," she shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Mark followed without hesitation, leaping onto the ledge beside her. They moved quickly, their steps light as they navigated the narrow path. They could see the exit now, a glowing portal at the far end of the room. It was so close, but the obstacles were relentless. With every jump and every dive, the humans proved to themselves and the aliens that they were not the weak, fragile creatures the examiners had thought them to be. They had the heart of survivors, of warriors. The alien examiners had underestimated them. With a final leap, they cleared the last set of traps and reached the glowing portal just as the timer hit 0. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the aliens' eyes widened in astonishment. They had made it through the most dangerous test yet. They had defied all odds. The leader of the aliens stepped forward, its voice thick with disbelief. You actually made it." Mark and Jenna stood tall, their chests heaving with exhaustion. The other humans behind them had also made it through the challenge, proving their strength and resilience. "We told you," Mark said, his voice firm and unwavering. "Humans are not what you thought." The aliens said nothing, their eyes filled with a mix of awe and fear. The humans had just proven that their endurance, intelligence, and bravery were unmatched. This was just the beginning. And as the humans stood there, victorious, they knew that no matter what the aliens threw at them next, they would always rise to the challenge. The ultimate test. The portal flickered behind them, but Mark and Jenna didn't turn back. They stood in the center of the alien chamber, catching their breath, but the sense of relief was short-lived. The room was silent, eerily so. The alien examiners were still, their faces unreadable, staring at the humans in disbelief. The humans had made it through the impossible. But the silence told them something darker. It wasn't over. Not yet. Mark and Jenna exchanged a quick glance. They both felt it, the shift in the atmosphere. Something was coming, something bigger. The aliens had underestimated them before, but now, the look on the examiners' faces made it clear. The humans had triggered something they had not been prepared for. Then the voice of the lead examiner rang out, low and grave. "You have passed the tests of strength and endurance, but there is one final trial, a trial of the mind. You must prove that your will is as unyielding as your body." Before they could react, the floor beneath them cracked open, and a massive structure rose from the depths. It wasn't a simple trap or test. This was different. The platform was made of dark, slick metal, and its surface was covered in shifting patterns. It looked like some kind of virtual maze, alive, constantly changing, rearranging itself. The walls around them shifted, forming narrow pathways. Each one was guarded by strange mechanical entities, their glowing eyes watching the humans, waiting for a mistake. Mark and Jenna instinctively stepped forward, their senses heightened. They had no idea what to expect next. A new set of symbols appeared above their heads. The countdown timer reappeared again, but this time it was set for a much longer period, an hour. "Solve the puzzle," the voice of the lead examiner echoed from all directions, "or face the consequences. Fail, and you will be erased from existence." Mark didn't flinch. He could see the seriousness in the aliens' eyes now. There was no turning back. They had no choice but to solve this puzzle. His mind raced, trying to understand the new challenge. Jenna stepped forward, studying the maze. The patterns on the floor and walls seemed to shift in rhythm with her movements, almost as if the room was alive, adjusting itself to her every step. She could feel the weight of the situation, the pressure mounting, but she had learned to focus under pressure. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice steady. "This maze isn't just a puzzle. It's a reflection of the mind. It's trying to throw us off, distract us, make us panic." Mark nodded, his mind also beginning to understand. The alien examiners weren't just testing their physical abilities anymore. They were trying to break their minds, to make them doubt, to make them question if they were really ready for what was coming. "We need to stay calm," Mark said, stepping beside her. "The more we panic, the more it shifts." The room hummed as the maze began to distort even further. Walls collapsed and rebuilt themselves, each time a little more complicated than before. The pressure was unbearable, but the humans kept moving forward, navigating the constantly shifting paths. Mark found himself feeling more alert than ever. Each twist and turn forced him to think faster, to make decisions that could mean the difference between survival and failure. They came to a dead end, a glowing barrier blocking their path. The puzzle was now alive and interactive, reacting to their presence. Mark pressed his hand to the barrier, but it pushed him back, sending a shock through his body. His muscles tensed as the electric current ran through him. "Mark!" Jenna shouted, but he held up a hand to stop her. He wasn't hurt, just stunned. "I'm fine," he said, gritting his teeth. "We just have to figure this out. There has to be a way through." Jenna's eyes narrowed as she observed the glowing symbols on the wall. Each symbol seemed to pulse in time with their movements. Suddenly, it clicked. She motioned for Mark to step back. The symbols were clues, each one connected to the other, forming a sequence. The answer was in the pattern. Mark stepped aside, and Jenna approached the wall. With deliberate movements, she pressed her hand against the symbols in the order they appeared, matching the rhythm of the maze. The barrier before them pulsed, the energy building with each correct press. A moment later, the glowing wall shimmered, and then collapsed, revealing the path forward. The humans didn't hesitate. They moved forward together, side by side, pushing through the maze that now seemed to calm its shifting. But it was far from over. The final stretch of the maze revealed a vast chamber. In the center of the room was an enormous glowing sphere, suspended in midair. As they approached, the room began to pulse in rhythm with the sphere, and an alien voice rang out once again. "This is your final test. To reach the sphere and claim the prize, you must solve the ultimate riddle. Fail, and you will be lost to the void. Mark and Jenna didn't speak. They both knew this was the real test, the one that would decide everything. Their minds were sharp. They had conquered physical challenges, survived impossible odds, but now their intelligence was truly being tested. The sphere flickered with strange energy, the riddle forming within it, a complex set of words and symbols that seemed to defy logic. But Mark and Jenna were ready. Together, they began working through the puzzle, their minds in sync as they carefully pieced the riddle together. They could feel the eyes of the aliens on them, watching their every move. The stakes were higher now than ever before. Each moment was more intense than the last, and the clock was ticking down. But they weren't about to give up, not when they had come so far. And as they took their final steps, the riddle began to unravel, revealing its secret. The final riddle. The final riddle presented itself before them, an impossibly complex puzzle of symbols and phrases floating in midair. The strange alien language seemed to swirl like a vortex of confusion, teasing their minds with its cryptic nature. The room pulsed with an intense energy, the bright light from the glowing sphere casting long shadows across the metallic walls. It was silent, too silent. The air itself seemed heavy, waiting for the humans to fail. Mark and Jenna stood side by side, their eyes locked on the shifting symbols. The pressure was unbearable. They knew that one wrong move, one misstep, could mean the end. But they were far from the kind of people who gave up when the odds were stacked against them. Mark took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the challenge on his shoulders. "We've come too far to back down now," he whispered to Jenna, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. Jenna gave him a quick nod, her brow furrowed as she scanned the symbols. "It's not just a puzzle," she said. "It's a test of logic and perception. The aliens are trying to see how we think." The sphere before them flickered again, and with it a new set of symbols appeared, more intricate than ever before. Mark's eyes narrowed. The sequence was too complex, but he could feel the pattern forming in his mind. Every symbol had a purpose. Every twist of the design held meaning. The riddle seemed to mock them, but something about the arrangement of symbols felt familiar. Then it clicked. Mark realized that the puzzle was a reflection of the human mind, a test not just of intelligence, but of their very nature. Humans had always been the underdogs, always seen as the weaker species. Yet it was their adaptability, their ability to think outside the box, that had always been their greatest strength. He turned to Jenna. "The key to this riddle isn't about figuring out the answer in the traditional way. It's about thinking differently. It's about showing them how we overcome limitations." Jenna's eyes widened with realization. "You're right. This isn't just a test of logic. It's about showing them what we can do when we stop thinking like they expect us to." Together, they started to work through the symbols, not focusing on the individual pieces, but on how they could relate to each other. The puzzle's complexity was overwhelming, but the humans' unique way of thinking, more creative, more resourceful, began to shine through. They weren't just solving a riddle, they were showing the aliens something they had never expected, that humans could think in ways they couldn't even begin to comprehend. The symbols on the screen began to shift in response to their actions, aligning with their mental processes. As Mark and Jenna continued, they could see the room reacting, the sphere growing brighter, its energy intensifying with every correct step they made. The aliens stood silently, watching, but they couldn't hide the surprise in their eyes. For the first time in their lives, they felt the weight of the universe's gaze. Mark and Jenna weren't just facing alien examiners anymore. They were facing everything that had ever doubted humanity's worth, and they were determined to prove them wrong. But the riddle was not about to give up easily. Just when it seemed they were on the verge of cracking it, a new challenge emerged, a wall of static, preventing them from reaching the final answer. It was as if the sphere itself was trying to stop them, a final test of their endurance and patience. Mark clenched his fists, but Jenna's voice cut through the frustration. "Don't let it get to you. We're so close. Just keep focused." Mark took a deep breath and stepped forward. This was it, the final step. Together, they pushed through the mental barrier. Their minds worked in perfect harmony, piecing together the last fragments of the puzzle. With a final click, the sphere emitted a bright, blinding flash. Mark and Jenna shielded their eyes, feeling the energy surge through the room until it suddenly stopped. The light faded, and silence fell once again. Then the alien voice spoke, louder and clearer than ever before. "You have done it. You have passed the ultimate test." For a moment, there was only silence. Mark and Jenna looked at each other, disbelief flashing in their eyes. They had done it. They had solved the riddle and passed every test. But before they could fully process what had just happened, the ground beneath them trembled. The alien examiners began to move, but this time, it wasn't with a sense of superiority. The once stern faces now bore expressions of awe and even fear. "You," the lead examiner said, his voice barely a whisper, "are not what we thought. You have changed everything." As Mark and Jenna stood in stunned silence, the enormity of their accomplishment began to sink in. The universe had underestimated them, and now it would never be the same. The final test had not only proven their strength, but it had also revealed something more powerful: humanity's unyielding spirit, a force that no one, not even the aliens, could ignore. The alien revelation, the silence that followed the completion of the riddle, was deafening. Mark and Jenna stood motionless, still trying to grasp the enormity of their victory. Their hands, trembling slightly, hung at their sides, as though the weight of the moment was too much to bear. The room, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now seemed to vibrate with an unfamiliar energy, almost as though the very walls were alive. The lead alien examiner, a tall figure with translucent skin that shimmered with every movement, stepped forward. His eyes, multifaceted like a spider's, shifted to meet the human's gaze. "You have done the impossible," the alien said, his voice now filled with a strange mixture of respect and disbelief. Mark and Jenna exchanged a quick look, still processing what was happening. The aliens had made it clear from the beginning that humans were considered insignificant in the grand cosmic hierarchy. But now they had not only solved the riddle, they had shattered the assumptions about human weakness. "You are not like the others," the alien continued, his voice soft, almost reverent. "You do not think as we do. You do not act as we do. And yet, you have surpassed our expectations, perhaps even more than that. You have challenged the very foundation of everything we believed." Jenna's heart raced. She was no longer just a student in an alien school, trying to survive an impossible test. She and Mark were now standing at the center of a massive revelation. They had changed the way the aliens saw the universe, and in doing so, they had unlocked a new understanding of themselves. "Why?" Mark asked, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around him. "Why were you testing us? What's the purpose of all this?" The alien leader hesitated for a moment, as if considering how to explain. "We had thought that we were the apex species, supreme in every way. Our intellect, our technology, our understanding of the universe, it all made us believe that we had nothing left to learn. That is, until you arrived." Jenna's mind raced. "So we were a test, to prove that we could be more than we were." The alien nodded slowly. "Yes, but also to prove something about you. Humanity possesses a strength we could never have anticipated, a strength that we do not fully understand. You can adapt, think outside the box, and endure in ways that no other species can. You do not bow to the universe's rules. You bend them to your will, and that makes you dangerous." Mark's mind flashed back to the intense pressure in the exam room, the moments when he had felt as though everything was slipping away. But in the end, it had been their humanity, specifically their ability to adapt and think differently, that had saved them. "Dangerous," Mark echoed. "Are you saying you were trying to eliminate us, or were we just an experiment to you?" The lead alien's eyes darkened, but there was something else there, something akin to respect. No, we did not intend to eliminate you, but we had to know what you were capable of. We feared you. Jenna blinked in disbelief. You were afraid of us. Yes, the alien said, his tone low. Your species has the potential to upend the balance of power in this universe, and we did not know how to handle that. We believed that you were unworthy of the knowledge you sought. But now we see that you are more than capable of wielding it. The room seemed to shrink around them, the gravity of the conversation pressing down on Mark and Jenna. The very laws of the universe that had governed existence for millennia, laws that the aliens had considered unchangeable, were now in question. And what does this mean for us? Jenna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What happens now? The alien leader stepped closer, and for the first time, his expression softened. It means that the universe is changing. The way we view the cosmos is changing. Humanity has the power to reshape everything. You are no longer a species to be ignored or underestimated. You are one to be watched, and perhaps even respected. Mark and Jenna exchanged a stunned look. This was more than they had ever expected. They had gone from being insignificant beings in an alien world to key players in the cosmic game, with the power to influence the very fabric of the universe. Your journey is just beginning, the alien said, his voice filled with a sense of awe. We cannot predict what you will do next, but we are certain that the universe will never be the same. The hum of energy in the room intensified, signaling the end of the test. As the walls shimmered and the light began to fade, Mark and Jenna stood at the threshold of something far greater than they had ever imagined. They had not only passed the alien exam, they had unlocked the secrets of the universe itself. And now, they would write their own destiny. A new dawn for humanity. The energy in the room shifted. The air felt thick, charged with the weight of the revelation. Mark and Jenna stood frozen in place, the implications of the conversation settling in like an avalanche. What had started as an overwhelming, near-impossible challenge had evolved into something far bigger, something they could hardly comprehend. For years, humanity had been under the thumb of the galaxy's most advanced and powerful species, considered little more than a primitive curiosity. Yet here they were, standing in the very heart of the aliens' power, with the knowledge that their species now held the key to rewriting the universe's rulebook. They were no longer just survivors. They were forces of change. The alien leader, who had remained stoic up until this point, took a step back. You now stand on the precipice of a new era. The path forward is yours to choose. Mark opened his mouth to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. The enormity of their situation was suffocating. It wasn't just about passing an exam anymore. It was about everything they had known being turned upside down, every assumption they had made, every belief about their place in the universe. It all had to be redefined. How? How do we move forward from here? Jenna asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. The alien leader met her gaze with a steady, almost solemn look. That, young human, is up to you. You have seen the truth now. The universe is not the infallible, immutable structure that we once thought. It can bend, just as you do. You can change it. But how? Mark asked, taking a step forward, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We've never been given this kind of power before. How can we even begin to understand the weight of it all? The alien paused, considering. We have watched your species for millennia, and we know that you will not seek power for its own sake. Your greatest strength is your ability to adapt, to survive, to thrive, even when faced with the most impossible odds. It is your resilience that makes you dangerous. Mark and Jenna exchanged a glance, their minds racing as they pieced together what they were being told. The aliens weren't just respecting humanity. They were acknowledging that humanity had the power to challenge them, to challenge everything the aliens had known. The leader spoke again, his voice taking on a tone of finality. But beware, with great power comes great responsibility. The universe is vast and filled with beings who may not share your values. There are forces out there that would seek to use your power for their own gain. You must be vigilant, or the very thing that makes you strong could become your undoing. Jenna felt the weight of his words. This wasn't just a challenge of intellect or strength. It was a challenge of morality, of integrity. Humanity had the power to shape the future of the universe, but they also had the responsibility to ensure that power was used for the right reasons. As the room began to glow brighter, the alien leader turned and gestured toward the door. The test is over. You have proven your worth. But the real journey begins now. You must decide what kind of universe you wish to build. We will be watching, but we will not intervene. The future is yours. Mark and Jenna nodded slowly, still trying to process everything that had happened. As the light around them grew stronger, the door to the chamber opened. But instead of the cold emptiness they had once known, it now led to a new horizon, one filled with infinite possibilities. For the first time, Mark felt a sense of hope, not just for their future, but for humanity's place in the cosmos. They were no longer just the underdog species. They were the creators of their destiny. The alien leader spoke one final time before they stepped through the door. Do not waste this chance, humans. The universe has been watching you. Now it is time for you to show us all what you are truly capable of. And with that, the door closed behind them. The world beyond awaited.